Hi, welcome to today's video and thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about this subject, the best month for you to retire. Now, there is a best time of year, I think, that works better for most people here in colder climates like Canada. But today I'm going to share with you a way for you to figure out what might be the best time for you to retire and give you some insights around three different areas, we'll call them categories, that will help you to sort of shape your thinking in making that decision. Before we get into that though, remember to like and share this video, put your comments below, and let's get into why you're here. Okay, let's look at the three categories or areas that we're going to focus our attention on. First is the benefit of paying less tax. So there might be a time of the year that might be better for you from a tax point of view. The second is a non-financial benefit. And the third is financial benefits. So let's get into the first one, that is paying less tax. Okay, retiring at the first half of the year. Let's break that down into sort of half of a year at least, instead of just a month. For those of you who would consider retiring at the first half of the year, let's understand why this might be beneficial to you. Okay, so let's say you were to retire in April. And what does that mean? It means that your income on an annual basis is prorated, right? So if you retired at April, you're not getting all of the year's income. So what does that mean? That's going to be a year in which you're paying or earning less money and you'll have a lower tax rate. Well, then that would mean that you could start to employ some planning opportunities here, and that would be to begin an early meltdown of your RRSP, right? Because your income is much lower than it would be if you worked all the way to the end of December. And so retiring in April affords you the opportunity to be able to dig into that big RSP balance that you have. Many of you have large RSP balances, and deferring it just makes getting out of that RSP and eventually your RIF more painful because of the tax you're going to incur. The other areas, let's say you have real estate. Let's say you had intended to sell some positions. Maybe it's a cottage. Maybe it's you don't want to travel outside of the US to Florida or wherever to visit there. For some reason you want to stay locally. So these particular properties might have a capital gain. And so now that might be a good time for you to retire early, have less income, and then be able to absorb the capital gain for the real estate position. So this is all about planning and timing in that respect. The next area is really, as it relates to sort of a non-registered portfolio, tax gain harvesting. So essentially, what does that mean? You have a potential capital gain. You know, many of you have not sold your non-registered investments because you have a large capital gain. Well, now might be the time, if you're working only up to say April or May and you've got a lower income, well, this is a good time for you to consider tax gain harvesting. Did I say tax loss harvesting? Tax gain harvesting, because your CPP and old age security may have not kicked in yet, and so this will be a great period of time before those other inflation adjusted incomes start to come into your bank account. The second is, if you have a sabbatical year or just a year in which you're taking a time off before you start to go back for another year of work, or maybe 2 years, whatever that timeline might be, if you're going to have a lower income year for whatever reason you're doing, that would be a good time for you to do the tax gain harvesting as well. And if you have a capital loss, that would afford to offset the capital gains that you're going to incur. So that would be great. And finally, the last one would be, if you were expecting higher future tax brackets. Now, the way you would know this is to do some planning. That's why I advocate getting a plan done. If you were to get a plan done and it would show that your government benefits, CPP and old age security, your private pension plan, rental income, maybe some business income, when that starts to kick in, you know later on in your life your tax rate is going to be high. So you may want to do some of this tax gain harvesting earlier to be able to get out of those positions, reset the ACB so that it's not as a big problem for you later on in your life. Okay, now let's dig into the non-financial. This is really about retiring with purpose. I really like this section of helping clients decide about when's the right time. Certainly there's going to be financial that we're going to look at, but the non-financial, this is the part I think that many retirees aren't ready for. You see, when you begin to retire, you know, day one, for instance, and you, whatever your profession was, a doctor, lawyer, a teacher, firefighter, police officer, just working for the government, I don't know, any position you think about, you're no longer that person. And so you wake up day one, and what happens? Well, your routine has changed, right? You don't have to set the alarm, but you're still waking up at the same time because your body is used to getting up for 30 years at the same time every day of the week. And so there's this period of adjustment that every retiree goes through where they're trying to figure out what their new routine is going to look like. That's why we say before you retire, it might be useful to try to take 1 month and do as close to that routine as you possibly can to see what kind of adjustments you might want to make before you go to retirement. But the issue is day one, you have to have a sense of purpose when you go into retirement. When you are retiring, and because of whatever profession you had defined you, and you go into retirement without a sense of purpose, this is going to lead to disastrous type of retirement. And it might take you a couple months, if you haven't thought ahead of time of what you might want to do. It might take you a couple months to sort of figure that out, get into your groove, get into your interest, and start going. But it's really important that you do figure that out. And you might be around your spouse a little bit more than you're used to. And I'm laughing about this because this is the time of your life where you were looking forward to getting with your spouse. If you're single, then your schedule's freed up and you can dive into your hobbies. But if you're now with your spouse and you had, let's face it, most spouses have their own routines, right? You go to work, the other spouse is maybe working, maybe not working, but even if they're not working, they have a routine. And they have their morning routines and their evening routines. And then you're home and you're like, I'm here, and they have a routine that's kind of getting in the middle of their routine. So you have to know what their routine is like, what your routine is going to be like, and then where you're going to meet in the middle and enjoy the things you both want to do together. So it is a bit of an adjustment for spouses when you first retire. Now we're going to examine two guys that are going to retire. One's going to retire in April. He's pretty happy. And the other guy in November has got his jacket on. And is that he's going to walk the dog or something? Okay, so the guy the person who's going to retire in April is looking at this, right? Golfing, sunny weather. And then here's the guy with his new toy in the winter going to shovel the driveway. Okay, so why am I saying that? Because this is very important. It's really about the momentum that you're carrying into your retirement. So I want you to consider you're getting all amped up about retiring. You're counting the days. Those are going by. You finally retire. Everybody's cheering for you. Congratulations. Off you go. Good luck in retirement. And you're in the spring, summer, or you're in the fall, winter time. So what's significant about those times? In the spring and summer, the sundown happens a lot later in the day, right? And in the fall, winter, the sundown begins much earlier. So there's less daylight hours for you to begin your retirement. It's more like evening, dusk, nighttime hours. I mean, let's face it, in November, December, we start seeing, 6 o'clock, 5:30, 5 o'clock, it gets dark. And so it's difficult to get excited about your retirement when it's dark so suddenly, right? And sunny skies, vitamin D, outside starts right away in your retirement if you're retiring in the spring, versus you're retiring and the next 6 months are going to be gray. We're talking about in Canada, right? Gray, cold, snow. It's just, unless you really love the wintertime, it's an unpleasant time for you to say, yes, I'm retired. And let's get to it. And all of a sudden it's dark and dreary and not so much fun. All of these different times of the year affect your mental state, your chemistry, your enthusiasm for beginning a new chapter in your life. So examine who are you? Are you the kind of person that loves the fall, loves the winter, can't wait to get at it? You go on skiing trips, you love skidooing and ice fishing and that kind of thing. Then maybe you defer till the fall because you get to jump into the activities that you love. If you hate the cold weather and you don't like shoveling snow, and you don't like heavy sweaters and so on, but you love the summertime, you've got a pool, for example, if you've got a pool in your backyard and you love the summer weather and you love the barbecuing, golfing, camping, hiking, exploring in the summertime, then you may want to retire in the springtime. Now, for those of you who are going to retire in the fall, I encourage you to take a vacation right away. Get out of the house and go right away, because you need this separation between your work life and jumping into retirement. And it's dreary, it's cold weather, it might be raining in November or snowing in November. I encourage you to get out, go walk on the beach, go on a cruise, do something that is going to sort of make a line, right, in terms of a start and a stopping point, or a stopping and a starting point, because it's really not great weather I think a lot of Canadians love outdoors, but November is not really winter yet, and it's not really summer. It's kind of rainy and not so pleasant. So I would say get out of your home, take a vacation, whether it's a cruise or you go to some sunny place in the Caribbean. Just decompress, go somewhere and just relax and figure out, okay, we're going to come back home and retirement's going to begin. But just treat this as a reward for yourself, okay? Okay, now the next part of this is about time. You can't buy back time. What are we talking about here? If you're thinking about when to retire, so many of you are saying, I'll work another year, I'll work 2 more years, or I'll work to the end of the year. And I remind you, you have enough money, you call your boss today and tell him you're out, you're leaving, you're not coming to work tomorrow. Nobody does that. But if you knew today that you'd have enough money to retire and you're not married to your job, what I'm saying by that is so many people don't like their jobs, and there are few lucky people that love what they do for a living. And it's who they are. And it's whether, let's say, you're a doctor or a teacher and you just love that profession, it's hard to leave that profession, right? That's a given. But for most people, they don't love it that much. And so if you have enough money to retire and you can retire, I encourage you to retire. Okay, so let's talk about that. Time, you can't get back. If you're 60 today, the question I have for you is, how many summers do you have left, right? If it's a wintertime, you love wintertime, how many winter times do you have left to enjoy? Let's look at this. You may have maybe 20 good summers. And I say good not because of the weather, I'm saying good because of your health. If you're 60 and the average age of mortality in Canada is about 85, so if you're 65 years of age, mortality is about 85 in Canada if you're healthy. So if you think about how many of those years are going to be years where you have great mobility, relatively good health and energy, you have maybe 20 years, maybe less, right? Now, if you also factor in how many years do we have with sunny weather, we have about 50 days in Canada, on average, 50 days per year where the temperature is above 24 degrees. That's crazy, right? When I looked at that, I was like, that can't be right. But Canada is typically more cold throughout the year than it is warm. So if you're looking forward to retirement and having maybe days around the home when you just love gardening and your homebody and just love being barbecuing and at the pool, the backyard, golfing, camping, there aren't too many days that are warm enough for you to do that and enjoy it. And then there are fewer years for you to enjoy that. So I would say don't let another summer go by because you're thinking maybe you'll go and retire in the fall. If you have enough money and you can retire now, retire as soon as you can. Okay, let's look at the financial benefits of when to retire. This is actually really cool. I love thinking about this because when we do planning, we're looking at some of the things that are holding you back that make sense why you would wait. So timing of receiving a bonus. Some of you say, look, I've got to work until March or April, and then I get my bonus, then I can leave. That makes sense. Okay, fine. Health benefits terminate after, for many people, when you leave your work, your health benefits terminate. So what you may want to make sure that you do is you get all the medical procedures you need to have done before you leave work so that you can actually not have to pay out of pocket for that. You can get your health coverage to pay for that. Full pension retirement date. How many of you are teachers, firefighters, and police officers? You have a specific date that you can retire without any penalty or reduction of your pension. And then for many of you, retiring early can be really, really punishing on the pension that you would receive. So you're kind of forced to say, I got to work till this date in order to get the pension that I need in order so that you can retire. So that kind of makes sense about why you would defer to a certain date in order to leave work, is because your pension plan. Bank paid off time, sick days, vacation days. So many of you, or some of you who are working public sector and you can bank time. One of the things that you, if you're allowed to do, is to be able to use those bank time. Take that first. So let's say January comes and you say, I'm going to use up sick days, banked paid off time. Get through all that first, come back to work, and then announce your retirement and then leave. So there are some financial benefits as to why you defer, and those have to be examined. We can't just discount those. That's usually a lot of money when people start saying, let's retire much earlier on a pension plan and have a lot less money throughout your retirement. Well, thanks so much for watching today's video. I have a question for you as always. When did you retire? Or when are you planning to retire, and why? That would be an interesting question for us to hear the answers, because I know many of you have very specific reasons around why and when you retired. Again, thanks so much for joining me in today's video. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, and be well.